guys, this is Kayla
and Becky with Couple of Bees Read, and we had some questions or comments on Twitter.
Yes, so we have started each week doing author's tips. So this week I asked if anybody had any questions. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk a little bit first because I realized I'd never told the full story of how I got my agent. And then I'm going to answer the questions at the end, and we're going to give a shout out to those authors who spoke up and asked them. So definitely, if you have any more questions, or if I somehow missed your questions, drop them in the comments. This is something we're going to do every week so that your questions get answered. Some questions hopefully will be a whole new topic I haven't thought of.
That's right.
So to start out, a little bit of background about me, and I like to tell the whole story when I talk about getting my agent, is I finished my first novel when I was 19 and coming out of college. Started querying then, and nobody answered back. Like, actually, that's not true. Charlene Harris's agent answered back, and I was like, oh, and he was like, no. But
like, no thanks.
he just basically said no thank you, and that was it. But he answered back, so thanks, buddy. But basically, I got kind of down about it, and I realized since then that I made some pretty big mistakes. One is I wrote a book in a genre that I wasn't familiar with what was currently coming out.
Right.
So I wrote a sci-fi novel. I had read Asimov. I had read L. Ron Hubbard. I had read Orson Scott Card. Like, all of these who had come out and been popular at some point, but weren't popular anymore. So the stuff I was writing kind of probably came off as cliche.
But I loved it.
I know, you loved it.
And I'll be 65 in November. And I keep telling her, I'm not getting any younger here, and I would like the sequel.
We'll have to figure out what happens there. But that was my first mistake, is not being aware of the market. There might come a time when what I wrote is popular again, but it was not at that time. So my second mistake was not really learning what a query letter required.
Right.
Like, I read a few entries on Query Shark and was like, okay, yeah, I can do this. I'm a writer. I have an English degree. And I wrote some stuff, and I did not summarize it well. I did not have a good hook. And that was evident because nobody got back to me. Here's this thing. You can have a not so great novel, but have agents getting back to you because your query is really good. Right. And that's what I learned years later when after I sat down and finished my detective story, realizing that was the genre that I truly loved, that I was reading modern stuff in that genre. So that is what I finished. That is what I started querying. And we found a couple of programs online that really went over step by step how to write a query letter. And if that's something you want more of, that is definitely something we can do in another video. Basically, get a good hook, get a good summary, and say something clever in your author's bio.
Yeah, and I do. I think your author's bio is very it's very personal, but people will read it and go, wow, and I think your hook is really cute too, so it gets your attention.
But I could tell the difference. I also had a plan. I had an Excel sheet with all the agents I had looked up, and I put them in basically in the order of not necessarily importance, but who I wanted to query at the same time. So the first 5 I queried, then I waited a week and queried 5 more. I knew that my query was working when the first 5 I sent to a very, very popular thriller and mystery agent got back to me within an hour and was like, send me your full.
It was like the first one you sent out. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, we were at the beach, and I remember we got so excited about it.
Yes.
Because she wanted, like, the whole book. Or
She wanted a full. She requested the full manuscript, and I sent it to her, and that didn't work out. But the point was, I knew at that moment
that you had done the right
thing. That my query was good.
Yes.
So I could proceed with that. And even though, of course, there were agents who didn't respond. There were agents who took 6 months to respond. Not 6 months, because I didn't query for 6 months, but like 6 weeks to respond.
Yeah. But then there was one, it seems like, just out of the blue, you'd already forgotten about them, and then they said something.
Yes, one very, like, pretty famous agent who responded, and...
But many months later.
Yeah, many weeks later, because I started querying in March.
Oh, yeah.
And I signed in July with an agent. So, you know, the first thing you need to do if you're querying, make sure your query is tight. Don't send out 30 queries to the best agents, because you want to make sure it works. Pick true. 5, send them out. If you don't get a response in a week, tweak the query. Reach out on Twitter, reach out in your writing communities, and ask people to check that query letter. Like 100% do that. So the next thing I started doing is, this was in 2021. Nobody was going anywhere because of COVID. So I found a series of writer conferences that were meeting virtually.
Yes.
And we sat down and we looked at the agents who were there. We made our list, and I met with these agents virtually, like over Skype and over Zoom and over whatever they wanted to meet over. And that really helped. Like, if you can afford it, even if you're like, please, people, just give me money to do this conference for my birthday, like, do a writer's conference and get a time slot with an agent. They're like 10 minutes. You can get your pitch down, even if you just read your query letter to them, which is basically what I did. I had 2 requests for a full. Every agent I talked to requested pages.
Pages, yeah.
And the agent that I ultimately signed with, Stephen Hudson at Wordwise Media, he was one that requested a full. And about a month later, he gets back to me. It might have been 2 months later. I don't remember. But
let's see. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That was like in June, wasn't it?
I feel like it might have been in May, but I don't remember.
Oh, May, June. It was somewhere right around that time.
But he got back to me, and he made me an offer, and he made me one even over email. And then we signed up. We figured out a time to call and talk. I let the other agents know. I had another offer from an agent that I'd met who ultimately I didn't go with, just because he couldn't get to it as quickly. But like, both really good agents. And then once I'd figured everything out, read through the contract, had smart people read through the contract, I sat down and I signed the contract with Steve Hudson at Wordwise Media, and then the hard stuff started, which we will go into more later. But that is how I scored my agent. Like I said, I started querying in March and was signed by the end of July. But that was also after, my first very much failed attempt. Several years prior. So if there's anything I can say to authors out there querying, it is, don't give up. Don't wait a decade or two to get back out there again. Tweak that query, find the agent. It only takes one yes.
That's right.
You might not get your yes as fast as I did. I know one author I follow on Twitter, I'm in writing groups with her. It took her 4 years to get an agent, and she's excellent. She just had a novel that sold really well come out, and that's the thing. Everybody's journey is a little different. I know it's very hard sometimes to be on Twitter and Facebook groups where everybody's talking about, like, I'm in an on submission group, and everybody might come in and be like, hey, I finally got a publisher. And it's hard not to be jealous, but remember, we're in an industry where we need to support each other.
That's right.
So, speaking of supporting each other, I did have some good questions from authors. One is from Valerie Jane. at Garskel Mai. She said she wanted to talk about the school of thought that typos are okay if the story is good. Guys, if you're writing fan fiction to post online, sure, typos are fine. If you are querying an agent, you don't need to have a typo.
No.
There will be some agents at conferences, and I think this is where this kind of school of thought started, is that some agents will kind of hem and haw and be like, I mean, maybe 1 or 2 typos won't totally turn me off. But
you don't want them fixated on something you did wrong. You want them fixated on, wow, this is a great story.
And I understand the pressure. Not everyone's an English major. Not everyone has English major friends. Find someone. I'm not saying go out and spend $1,000 on a professional editor.
Right.
Find a librarian, join a writer's group, even if it's a writer's group that only lets you enter, 20 pages per month. Find people who will read over your work,
right,
even if it's just your local, grammarian.
Well, just think about anything that's worth doing is worth doing well, and it's worth actually working at it. Now, I'm not a writer yet, but I did a lot of research. Like, she would be at school and I'd be babysitting the kids, and I would be on my computer or my phone, and I would be researching agents, and I would be researching what do agents want. And I will just tell you, through my research, I found agents saying, if it's got one typo I might overlook, but if I start seeing a bunch of typos, it's like, I don't have time for this. It's like that. So, just be careful about that.
Because ultimately an agent wants a book that they're not going to have to touch. They can get it out and submit it as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. And typos are easier to get rid of than other things. So if your story is strong, that's great. Fix the other stuff, then put it out there.
Right.
The next question we got was from author J.P. Wilder. So at JPW author, one thing that a lot of authors I talk to struggle with is strategies to overcome the apathy that comes with the repeated rejections or being overly critical of one's own work to the point they discard what may be perfectly respectable material. Guys, I'm there, right now, because I've been on submission for nearly a year. And rejection is really hard. I got a rejection the other day. Technically, I didn't win a contest that I'd entered. That's also part of what we do. And it's really easy to say, I guess I'm not good enough, and quit. But don't do that. Don't take the easy route. Keep in mind that every author's story is different. I try to tell myself, Stephen King, he was rejected 50 times for Carrie. Nobody wanted that book. And this was before computers, so those rejections came slow.
Yeah.
In snail mail. So and I think James Patterson, his first novel was rejected over 100 times and then won Best Novel Award.
Exactly. And you have to remember that, yes, they are agents, okay? But they are human, and it is just their opinion. Now, they have expertise supporting them because they are in the business. They know what's selling, what's not. But I know you've gotten a few rejections, but they've been very complimentary about your writing. You write wonderfully. And I know, and you look at me and go, well, if I'm such a great writer, why are they not publishing this? That kind of thing,
And that said, some rejections are nice. Some are just
no thanks.
No thanks. Not my thing. There was an agent I queried I looked him up, and that's what he was known for, is those quick, not my thing, rejections.
Yeah. Nothing personal, just
that is what it is. You don't want, an agent or a publisher. You do not want one who is not passionate about what you've written.
That's right.
So try not to think of rejection as rejection, but just simply, this is not the person for me.
Yeah.
Like, I hate to compare it to this. It's kind of like dating.
Yeah.
When you break up with someone, that's just not the person for you.
No.
And it's hard because, you know, what you've created is so much a part of yourself.
That's right.
And,
and it's hard. It is part of you, and it's like someone's insulting you personally, but they're not. And don't think of it that way, you know.
And that's how I deal with it. Like, I had a good many rejections from those agents I sent to. But I kept in mind it only takes one yes.
That's right.
And you want a yes from someone who wants it.
That's right.
You don't want a yes from someone who's like, I mean, I guess you've bugged me enough. You seem like an okay person. Let me represent you. You don't want that. You want someone who's passionate about what you've written. So keep that in mind. These are people who, believe it or not, do have the best interest of the work in mind. Like, they are looking for the book that's going to make them a buck.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not personal.
No.
Don't take it that way.
No.
And that would be my suggestion.
Don't give up.
Exactly.
Just don't give up. And I know that's hard to do sometimes, but just don't give up.
It's very hard to do.
Okay? So keep at it. I mean, if you have a query that you're questionable about, you know, go to our blog, send it to us.
Absolutely.
Don't go to our Instagram and send it to us. We won't get it because
we're still banned from Instagram for some. Well, we got hacked.
Yeah, we got hacked, and I'm still mad about it. So, and I'll probably continue to bring that up. But you know, send it to us personally, or
get in touch with me on Twitter. Like, if you have a query you want someone to look over,
we'll be happy to look over.
We can look that over.
Sure.
I will give you feedback. And if you do have any other questions that aren't query related, maybe they're just writing related or routine related or agent related, please put them in the comments and we will be glad to answer them when we can. Until then.
Well, I want to say one thing.
Oh, you want to say one thing?
Just one more thing.
Okay.
I was just going to say, and if you're someone like me who is supporting the writer and you have questions about what can I do to support, you know, my person, then, you know, you can direct those to me, because it's really, really important that, you know, your author has support that believes in them. Mm-hmm. That's really important. And
thank you for that.
I could be a bit biased, but I would tell her if the book wasn't good. And I love Chase Harlem, and I'm really waiting for Chase Harlem to get published.
Yes.
So until then, that was my thing. So we'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.